Want your Pop OS cake and your KDE frosting too? Stick around, I'll show you how it can be done. Welcome to the Drunk Linux User. I'm Len. I am the Drunk Linux User. And as I've been going on about for the last few or several or probably last week's worth of videos, I have recently moved to Pop OS, and it uses the GNOME desktop, and I've got it working just great, just wonderful. But I do like KDE. And somebody recently commented on one of my platforms that it's possible to do this, but I had to do a little research to make sure I knew what I was getting involved with, because I was a little bit, I'll be honest, I was a little bit afraid of really hosing my system, and I did not want that whatsoever. So I did my research. I read and I read again, and I read the third time just to make sure I knew what I was doing and what I was getting into. And let me show you how this can be done. I'll put the links to these pages in the show notes below, so that if you want to do this, I think you'll enjoy it, because it's really nice. All right, so let's start with what you need to do first. Probably wouldn't hurt to make sure that you have a live thumb drive handy, just in case something really gets boogered up and you have to boot in with that thumb drive and change a setting, or just fix something that maybe didn't work out right the first time around. So that's my first suggestion. The next suggestion comes from linuxcapable.com, and what it does is it shows you how to install KDE Plasma Desktop on top of Ubuntu 22.04. Pop OS is built on Ubuntu 22.04, long-term support LTS. And first thing you want to do is you want to update Ubuntu, and you do that by using sudo apt update. And this gives you a little shortcut. If you've never seen this before on a terminal, you can use and put another command right behind it, sudo apt upgrade, and then another space, and that -y means to automatically answer yes, because the terminal is going to go through and do the update, and it's going to show you what it's going to be able to upgrade, and it's going to then ask you, do you want to do this? And you can either hit enter, type Y, or you can just insert it into this command line to be able to automatically set it for you, and you don't have to do anything. You just sit back and watch it roll. This is a suggestion that I thought was worth it. This allows you to import KDE Plasma backports, and I know that kind of sounds like backports. Well, that kind of sounds like that's old stuff, but actually it's new stuff. So if you think about backports as what it intuitively sounds like, you're going to be wrong, like I was when I first heard about this. But backports gives you the ability to have the more recently included KDE Plasma and desktop available to the Ubuntu repositories. And we're going to be pulling this information from Ubuntu, actually Kubuntu, which is the KDE version of Ubuntu. So you can copy right here from the web page, for example. Just copy it and paste it into a terminal. So this is adding the repository for the PPA for Kubuntu backports. Again, using that -y at the end allows you to just sit back and let things happen. Then run sudo apt get. You don't have to use get. You can use sudo apt update if you want to. You have the choice of doing either one. They do actually do different things, but neither here nor there for today's. If you just want to copy paste, it's all going to work. So once you have the repository installed, now you have to make a choice. You can install a minimal KDE desktop, a standard desktop, or a full desktop. Now, I chose full, and that's just because I wanted the full-blown KDE experience, but that brings in a lot of stuff. Okay, this is like 4 or so gigs of download that you're going to be doing. This took me about 17 minutes to download and install. So I have no idea how. I think I probably would have normally have gone with KDE Standard had I known the full scope of what I was bringing in. Regardless, I've got KDE and it's working. But if you want the full, go sudo apt install KDE-full, and it just kind of goes with the territory that if you want the standard, which basically gives you the default web browser, text editor, email client, and so forth, then you would use the standard version, sudo apt install KDE-standard. If you want the minimal, then you just go with sudo apt install KDE Plasma desktop. Unless you're very limited for space, I would suggest standard is probably going to give you the best KDE desktop experience, unless you really know what you want and you don't want. So take this into consideration. If you're not familiar with all the workings of KDE, but you want to pick and choose what you want later, you can use desktop, but I would go with standard if you're not sure. So, desktop installation procedure. Once you've chosen which branch to install, the following steps will be similar, if not the same. Okay, so when it gets done installing everything, it's going to ask you to come up and make a decision, a display manager. Okay, now with GNOME, it uses the GDM, GNOME Desktop Manager, I believe is what it stands for. I could be wrong. It happens. Or Display Manager. GNOME Display Manager? Yeah. Let's work with that one, huh? But with KDE, they use something different. They use Sddm, which sounds a little kinky, but, this is Linux. Plasma is recommended to run using Sddm. Now, the reason for this is due to the fact that in the GNOME environment, when you're running a GNOME system, a lot of integration occurs with GDM. But if you're not using the GNOME environment and you're using KDE, you're using Sddm. What does this mean? It means that the applications, the operating system, are going to integrate better using Sddm for KDE and with GNOME GDM. If you're going to be using KDE specifically, you hit the tab key or use your down arrow key to select Sddm. Make sure it's highlighted like you're seeing on the screen here, and tap OK. That will install the Sddm Display Manager. Okay, we're not quite done. Now, I didn't do this on a virtual machine. I did this on my live machine, okay? But I don't take anything for granted, and I have seen this once before, even on a live machine, where when you go to boot up, all you see is this, keyboard on there. You don't really see much of anything else. So I went ahead and I made this file, okay? I made the change to this particular file. I added input method equals blank. So I just did this for safety purposes, and this is using Nano, which is a terminal editor. Okay, don't be afraid of this. Just follow the instructions. You don't even have to, you're not even going to be like all terminal when you're doing this. You're going to have your desktop open. Keep this page open. Follow the steps. Simple. To save that file, Control O, and then to exit the screen, Control X. Okay. All right. Reboot. But make sure you've got these pages saved. Otherwise, you're going to have to come back and watch this video. I'll get more views. I might move up in the analytics. God, what a horrible thing to happen. So anyway, after you reboot, you're going to log into KDE Plasma. Now, how is this done? Well, the way it worked for me, up at the top, there was a white bar. Okay, this is because it's coming from Kubuntu, and it has their login screen. And on the upper left side, there is a drop-down selector to give you a choice as to which operating system or which desktop environment you want to actually boot into. So with mine, I chose KDE Plasma and entered my password, and I was right up to the desktop. Now, if you have multiple monitors, and if your graphics card assigns them really weird numbers for, like, my primary should be number 1. Why it's number 3, I don't know. And it's even the middle plug on my graphics card, so out of the 3. You may have to, look over to your other monitor. You'll see your desktop maybe over here. On a separate monitor, you might see it hopefully land right in front of you. If that works, great. If it doesn't, don't stress about it. You can change using displays in the settings. Excuse me. There's some instructions here on how to make things look for your KDE desktop. Now, you can switch back if you want to go back to GNOME because you don't like KDE. Change the display manager first before you do anything. And to do that, you're just going to rerun the pop-up to configure the. Let's see. In the future, if you want to change the default manager back to GDM to use GNOME and so on for the KDE and Sddm display manager, open your terminal and then rerun the pop-up to configure the default display manager using the following command. This sudo dpkg-reconfigure space sddm is going to give you that little box I showed you before up here. In fact, I'll just show you, huh? Why don't we just do that? Right here. It'll give you this box right here, configuring SDDM. Then you can choose GDM, or you can go back to SDDM later if you want to. If you want to get rid of KDE, these instructions right here, just add it to the terminal, reboot. KDE will be gone. But I have a word of caution about all of this. Even though you've installed KDE Plasma on top of Pop! OS, all the Pop! OS specific programs, the desktop environment, it's still there. Okay? If you start removing things from KDE, you may also inadvertently, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, it's just it could happen, you could accidentally remove something that Pop! OS needs to run GNOME. So the best word of advice I can give to you about installing this for any reason is that make sure you're ready to do this if you want to. Now, the nice thing about Pop! Is that you can restore. It does have a recovery service built into it. So if things get really, really strange, you're crashing, you're having problems logging in, whatever, run the recovery, and you'll probably be back and running in no time. You might have to do a little tweaking, but the good thing about this is you're not going to lose your data. So I also use an NVIDIA card, and KDE out of the box does not look good with an NVIDIA driver. And I'm using the 515 driver that they have right now. And again, on GNOME, I even had to do a few tweaks with that as well. In KDE, there's a great guide on how to do that. I'll leave this link here. Buttery smooth plasma experience on NVIDIA. this is a great tutorial on how to get things to work. Now, with Plasma settings, I'm going to show you right now. For example, go over here, bring up settings, and go to displays and monitor. There's compositor. There is a suggestion here about the rendering backend. Don't worry about this if you're using the latest KDE desktop. Why? Well, this person asked the same question. Why can't I change my compositor? And one of the answers down here is OpenGL2 and OpenGL3 were merged together. The change backend drop down was removed. So when you see this particular instruction, rendering backend, OpenGL 3.1, okay, you can ignore this one. I did. I had to. Another thing I'm going to tell you is if you run the first set of these commands and everything works great for you, stop. If it's smooth and you're having no issues whatsoever, just stop. Keep this page, but just stop. Okay? There's a reason for this. So, under latency, okay, force smoothest animations, which I've got right there. Latency, I've got, okay, that was latency. Tearing prevention, automatic. And allow application to block compositing unchecked. Okay, that is right up here. That kind of threw me for a loop 2 times now. But allow applications to block compositing unchecked. All right. So then the next thing that they suggested was going to workspace behavior, which is right here. And it said animation speed. Now, at default, this is actually one further, but it really does slow down the animation speed and too slow. Now, for mine, for example, if I'm going to bring up the menu, which you can't see too well right there, of course, but let's do this little pop-up right here. There wasn't anything bad with that. It wasn't jerky. It wasn't jittery. So I just brought it down 1 for me because that's what works best for me. Okay. And let's see. Going into the NVIDIA X server. Bring that guy up here right here. Okay. OpenGL settings. Right there. All right. Allow flipping unchecked. Check. Quit, save, whatever you want to do with that. But this is, I would continue on just a little bit further. This is what I did. Okay. I went to X server display configuration. X server display configuration. Okay. And you can see I have actually 2 monitors and a TV hooked up to this. So my setup's a little bit different. You may only have 1 monitor, which is just fine, or 2, whatever. If you have 3, just know this is possible and it works just fine. So click on the Advanced tab. Okay. And set the maximum resolution and refresh, which is I have done. Number 2, check force composition pipeline, not the force full option. So I've got this guy right here checked, but this one is unchecked. Click on Save to X config file. That is, I know it's here somewhere, right there. Okay. I learned something new with this, okay? Click on preview. Oh, there we go. Click on show preview. And here is where you can drag it. All right. And it says, okay. Find section device. And below the line that starts with board name, add option triple buffer on. So I went down to Let's see, we're looking for section device right here. Ah, maybe I didn't save that. Oh, I did, excuse me. But I'm going to show you how that's done. You just copy it like this. Come over here, device. You can put this space in here right there. You can paste it in right there. In Pop! OS on my system, I did not have this file. By going into your file browser, you will see. Let me get a new window open up so I can show you. All right. Okay. So this is supposed to be saved under etc. And then there's supposed to be a folder in here. You should see it, X11. I did not have this, okay? So I'm going to open it up with my editor. Whoa, bring it down. Okay. And section device. Yeah, look at that. It didn't save. Well, okay, we're going to save it. Who knows? Maybe I'm going to have a great experience now. If not, I'll just send it back. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. Because this is in a system folder, I have to put in my password. Okay. It is in there now. So when I go to reboot, I'll have that option as well. But right now, I have nothing to complain about as far as the way my system looks. The next section talks about opening up a text editor and setting up a little bash file. Not hard. You just save it as this file name, kwin.sh. Go to your home directory, which I probably should have just left open for you to see. Yeah, right. On the fly, right? Okay. So, in the home directory, make sure you can see your hidden files. If you don't know how to do that, once you're in here, just hit Control and H and it'll show hidden. And we're going to go to config. And it says the next thing we need to do is Plasma Workspace. So Plasma Workspace. And then env. And there is my little bash file right there. Okay. Then you're going to change the permissions. Now, to do that, you can, from in here, you can, for example, go to Properties, and you'll see that I have mine set for Can View and Modify for owner and group, but others can only view. It is executable. That's how you can do it in the GUI if you don't want to mess around with the terminal. So we've got that done. Reboot, and everything should work just perfectly. Mine does work perfectly. I have no complaints whatsoever. I think this is an actual wonderful solution for the problem that KDE has with NVIDIA cards. Now, this, just to reiterate, this is if you have an NVIDIA card. If you have AMD or Intel, you're probably not going to see any jitteriness or lag or anything like that. If you do, just search for AMD, Linux, KDE, screen tearing, or whatever you have going on that's causing a problem. You will find the answer. Reddit's a great source, by the way. There are a lot of people who share a lot of wonderful information on here. So, we are going to go back. We're going to go back over here to say that this, of course, is changing your default system into something different. This is a choice. This is not a necessity. So if you are a big KDE user, you like what Pop has to offer, if you think I think it's really, really solid and stable. It works really great for me. If you have all those same desires, wants, and maybe even needs, then these steps can get you working in Pop with KDE. It's not impossible. You can also do the same thing with Linux Mint, for example. It is possible to do that. Anything that is an Ubuntu derivative of some kind or another, if it doesn't have KDE, these steps should be able to help you to do that. But again, make sure you have a thumb drive. I think you can see from all the little files and stuff that we've added in there that if you boot up and it's a blank screen, you're going to need that thumb drive, and you're just going to need to either rename or delete the files that you've put into the system that may have caused an issue once you rebooted. And then you can reboot again, and you should be pretty much back to normal. There are risks involved in anything, and any time that you go in and make a change to your system, just be fully aware of that. I'm trying to give you a very friendly, helpful piece of advice. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but if you have some terminal experience, if you have the desire to be able to do these things, it's possible. It's possible. I like it. I think it's really nice. So, I know I've kind of rambled on here. This is a longer one than I normally do recently, but I thought it was important to go through these steps and make my comments along the way, so that if you go to the web pages I've just shown you and you say, well, I don't have this, or what do I do? I hope this helps. So I'm going to leave this with our words of wisdom. Don't drive drunk. Don't drink and drive. Don't go to eBay, Amazon, or use MS Edge shopping all buzzed up thinking you're going to buy the latest, greatest, and coolest stuff, because you're probably not. In the meantime, bottoms up. Later, dudes.